What is up, sins and commandments alike? This is your host Griever, as always, here to bring you the latest episode of the latest season of Seven Deadly Sins, or Nanatsu no Taizai, Revival of the Commandments. Now, I really love this episode, guys. I thought it was actually better, for the most part, than the actual manga adaptation, which is rare to find a lot of the time. It's rare to find, but sometimes when certain parts are done correctly, animated well, and they don't change too much, or they don't ruin a moment in the manga, and they actually do it better, drag it out, do certain effects, things like that, things that aren't possible in the manga that they pull off in the anime. It's really great to see. Now, that being said, I do need to make one correction. After rereading the manga chapters up to chapter 119, which is where this episode ends, to make sure what was missing, what wasn't, there is one correction I do need to make, and that is the fact that, and I should have known this, they are not in Danafor. Danafor is not where the commandments are currently stationed. They are at Edinburgh. Now, I did not go back to the previous episodes and see if that was actually mentioned. I believe the term is castle, but that could be a just a subtitle thing, and if I had listened, I might have heard the term Edinburgh, because that is where they currently are, which is ironic because I brought up that the Vampires of Edinburgh would make for a great, like, 3-part, 4-part filler arc after this season is over, in between things, rather than creating new content. For those of you who don't know, the Vampires of Edinburgh is our first introduction to Escanor, the last of the Seven Deadly Sins, and it's a little arc that happens about 10, 11 years prior to the beginning of the series, back when the Seven Deadly Sins were not being hunted, back when Zartros was alive, Dreyfus, Hendrickson were good people, all that stuff. This happened back then. It was a mission the Seven Deadly Sins take on the Vampires of Edinburgh. So that is where they are, and I realized this after I reread, so I just wanted to make that correction. Now, this brings up an interesting point, and I won't be talking about the spoilers in this regard, but it's very... it's kind of interesting that Zeldris of the Ten Commandments would... instantly, the first time after being woken over 3,000 years, wants to go to Edinburgh. He's got a good excuse, sensing Meliodas' destructive power in the hole that he created in Edinburgh, which is true, along with a couple things that other members of the Sins did to the castle. But if that's the case, what about Danafor? It was a good assumption on my part, even though I should have double-checked my facts first, that he should have... why didn't he go to Danafor? Why Edinburgh specifically? And I think all you know where that's headed, for those of you who are up to date with the manga. But that being said, this is not going to be spoilers about that or any theories. Let's just get on with the episode itself, because great episode. The first half, or the first, like, 2/3 of the episode, basically takes place in the Fairy King's Forest, and we see what's going on with Harlequin, the fairies, Bon, Elaine, and Gerard. Now, this was done so much better in the anime than the manga, and that's what sold this for me. Now, those of you who know me know that I am not the hugest fan of Diane and King, and I think that their relationship over the manga series gets drawn out way too long. It's simplistic. It's good at the beginning, but it just drags and drags and drags. So I'm not a huge fan of the characters, and they don't really seem to get... they seem to stay the same. There's not a whole lot of character development, I found. In their relationship there is, but outside of that there doesn't have to be a whole lot of character development, or doesn't seem to be, with these characters, and that's the reason I'm not their hugest fan. But they can still have their moments, and I won't take those moments away from them. And this is King's moment. This is Harlequin's moment. The true Fairy King, the third Fairy King as far as we're aware, because he is such a badass in this. The music made every scene. The music made the scene when they're just going about, when the Albion thing is first attacking, and Harlequin, of course, stands up to it and is going, Chestyfold Sunflower, 4th configuration, and Chestyfold Increase, and all that stuff, and Bumblebee, and using all these abilities, and it's doing, he got a couple of good hits on it, and I'm sure it's doing a little bit of damage, but really it's doing nothing. But he's standing fast, standing his ground, well animated. It's picture for picture of the manga, but it's lengthened out. Like, we have longer, it seems like a longer reaction shot, more emphasis on how like Harlequin's like, you know, standing there, kind of standing his ground firmly moments, and more shots of the fairies reacting, it seems, to, you know, Harlequin being the only one willing to stand up to this thing that's destroying the forest. We cut over, I believe, at this point to Gerard, and because Jericho, of course, is going to find Bon, and Gerard and Bon are having their little tiff, which really lays a little unexplained. I'm going to just call a spoiler warning for what I think could be a reason, but still doesn't make sense. But fair warning in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. I don't understand why this is going on, because if Gerard's whole thing is about the, you know, the Fountain of Youth and Harlequin being the true fairy king and stuff, there's no reason why she would be mad at Bon. There's no reason to kill Bon. Like, I understand that the immortal blood is helping heal the forest, but he's still coming back all the time to heal the forest. It's not like just constantly draining him is going to make the forest any better. He's still going to come back and keep nourishing the forest. So I don't get it, especially after this scene where we see, you know, she says, oh, basically like, fuck the forest. As long as the Fairy King is alive, the forest can revive just like it did last time. That's no big deal. We can wait 20 years. I'm like, well, you seem to be in quite a rush, so the only thing I can think of is that this is in reference, of course, to Ro. Ro being the ancestral-looking guy of Bon that was in Stigma, was the human member of Stigma back 3,000 years ago in the Holy War, who just... Once again, I'm not going to go into huge detail here, guys, because I want to get back to the anime episode, but this is going to be into the spoilers, but just... Is she trying to get revenge? Because she doesn't mention it, of course, because we don't know about that at this point. But is she reminded too heavily of Ro? But that doesn't even make sense, because she kind of knew what happened in a way, and she shouldn't feel that betrayed. Maybe she's bitter now because of what happened to her brother, you know. But I don't get. I really don't get why this is going on. So spoilers ended. Let's go back to the rest of the episode. Now, for those of you who did not actually want to see the spoiler part, I'll just gloss over really quickly why I have a problem with this, is because it's not really explained. As I said, in the spoiler section, I gave a possible reason, but even that doesn't make a whole lot of sense. Why Gerard's character is doing this. Is it to build tension? Because the tension really goes nowhere. She seems fine with the rest of this after this, at least in the manga. She seems fine with the rest of this. Like, why does she need the Fountain of Youth back with the tree? Bon is still coming around. He's still giving the tree. Harlequin is making himself known as the Fairy King. If she was that desperate about it, Bon even said, I'm leaving the forest. So the fairies and Harlequin can work out their differences over X number of years. Like, I'll only be coming back just to nourish the tree and try to bring Elaine back. The whole, like, killing him or keeping him in a stasis of constant blood flow to the tree makes no sense, because as we see later in this episode, and we'll get into that right now here, is that they have their little tiff. She wants to take the Fairy King's forest, you know, back to what it was, and then of course Harlequin is getting beaten down and beaten down and beaten down. Once again, the music is going really, really, really good. Gerard, of course, is no match for Bon, but she decides to attack Elaine's body, and of course, you bitch! And Bon jumps in front and gets impaled, and that's what's going on here. Now, once the Avalon realizes it is just too strong for Harlequin to face, you know, defeats him and ends up slashing the tree in half. So the sacred tree is now no more. It's cut down at the trunk. And really emotional scene, really getting the feels going. And Gerard here states, after, you know, the fairies kind of get motivated to say, Fairy King, Harlequin, we acknowledge you. It's a nice, tearful moment, but run away, you need to survive. And Gerard grabs him and does the same thing. But states here really weird, and I said this in the spoiler section, which wasn't very long, but if she was going to sit here and state, you know, screw the Fairy King's forest, as long as the Fairy King is alive, the forest and the sacred tree can come back. It's not dead. It will never die as long as there is a Fairy King. But if you die, this forest will never return. So that line of logic she was willing to sacrifice Bon and his mortal blood, even though he was the one who healed the forest in the first place and was bringing back the blood of the Fountain of Youth constantly, and will be returning because Elaine's body is still there, and has no part in wanting to be the Fairy King. He's totally happy with Harlequin being the Fairy King. It doesn't make sense. She was all like forced at the sacrifice of one human and all this stuff. Like, then all of a sudden it's like, well, screw the forest. We can try again later. Yeah, just doesn't make sense to me, guys. Let me know what you think. It did not ruin this moment for me, because this is not about Jahar. This is all about Harlequin. And the music, of course, when the helmet falls over his face and we see Helbram and they have their little talk about Deanne and all this stuff. And this is a moment that was really good in their relationship, because King, of course, is acknowledging. He's like, you know, yes, I want to see Deanne again and stuff. And Helbram says, I know. You know what? You did your best. You tried. You got to acknowledge you were called a traitor, but you still stood your ground. You're still a good king. It's okay to be a little selfish. You know, you can think about yourself once in a while and go. And the music, once again, music from the start of this episode all the way till now has been spot on, perfect, just so good. And here's where even more music is great, because he kind of acknowledges this, you know, Harlequin acknowledges and lets Jahar kind of take him. Then all of a sudden, boom, hand comes out. He halts Jahar just with his own power and just kind of goes, you know, you're right. And Helbram's like, what do you think you're doing? And he's like, you're right. You know, I want to be a little greedy. I want to be a little selfish. I am a greedy king. And you know how I'm greedy? Because I want to protect everyone. I'm very greedy. I want to save my homeland. I want to revive the forest. I want to save all my friends and comrades. And I do want to see Deanne again. I want all these things. I don't want to have to pick just one. And then that's when this is the point right here. Once again, everything's been drawn out a little better, a little lengthier than the manga, really. The manga almost kind of skips through it chapter by chapter, panel by panel, really quick shots of this stuff. This, though, was dragged on, and I did not mind. Fairy King going Super Saiyan. Fairy King going Super Saiyan. That is what is going on here. Fairy King is going Super Saiyan. Harlequin is going Super Saiyan, and it looks awesome. The voice acting was really good for it. Don't know how it's going to handle in the English dub, but for right now, we're not watching the English dub. We are watching the Japanese, and right now, this was done really well. It was even a golden yellow aura with the lightning and everything. The sound effects were good. The music was on point, and then we see Sacred Treasure Release. True spirit form Chastifold, and we get the true form of Chastifold, and he just launches it at this thing straight in the heart, disintegrated, completely disintegrated. Now, I could be mentioning the parts about Bon and stuff, but it's not overly relevant. I mean, Bon and Elaine have their little, you know, Bon, of course, after the sacred tree gets cut down, Bon's holding Elaine and starts to slowly revive, and you know, King looks down and says, oh, you know, not just for Deanne and my fairies, but for you, Bon, and my sister, who's trying to protect my sister. You know, same thing. Nice moment, but it's, once again, it's not about Bon. And Bon's one of my favorite characters, but this is a Harlequin moment, and it is such a good Harlequin moment. We don't get very many of these that I love. This, in the anime, it was okay for me, because once again, not one of my favorite characters, don't really care about this plot thread they're going on right now. I didn't care for it in the manga so much. It's not that I disliked it, it's just that I was like, come on, let's go back to the Camelot and stuff at the time. This, though, this was done so much better in the anime, and just wow, guys, just wow. We cut over from that, and once again, going total manga on this one. No real changes. We see Hendrickson crawling away in his human form, and he's saying like he must warn Leonis. So he's done a complete 180. He's seems to be back to his normal self. He wants to warn Leonis, all of Britannia, because right now he overheard Zeldris state that right now their magical power is at their lowest point, and it'll take time for them to regain. And he goes, those guys are tank as shit right now. If we have any chance of beating them, we have to do it now. So I have to go warn Leonis and stuff, and he swears he'll get his friend Dreyfus back on his side and stuff. That's when we cut over to the Ten Commandments, and once again, at the beginning of this video, I corrected the fact that they are actually in Edinburgh, where the Castle of Edinburgh used to be, not in Danafor. So my correction, my fault, guys. Sorry about that, but that is where they are. So we don't really get a whole lot of information here. They're just talking about how the two Abalons were destroyed, and okay, you know, we knew that. There's a little banter back and forth about, you know, we've been sealed and we have to wait, and we're trying to sense what's going on. And then we get Galland here, which finally we have an official, as far as I'm concerned, an official name, spoken, subbed, and written in the episode. It is Galland, or Galland, not Garin, not Garland or anything like that. It's Galland. So Galland here, he decides, you know, and I love his voice. His voice reminds me kind of a old Master Roshi sort of. I'm trying to think of where I've heard this voice before, but it's like in those, you know, the old drunk man fighter in most things. He reminds me of one of those older, you know, those older style voice actors from old Japanese animes and stuff. Reminds me a lot of Vision of Escaflowne. He reminds me of the Isaac Newton looking guy. What was his name? The leader of the army that opposed everyone. I can't think of his name, but anyways, one of those type of characters. And I did not expect that voice to come from him, but cool. I'm good with it. And I actually like the fact that his armor keeps clinking and stuff, because he isn't a full armor. Once again, the color scheme a little off for me. I did not see that coming, like most people did not see that coming. But overall, it's okay, and it's whatever. And the voice actor is actually making me actually really like this character, who I thought was kind of before when I was reading the manga, and when I first saw his appearance, I'm still like don't love him, don't hate him, he's just a guy. But the voice acting is just making me go, this guy's awesome. He deserves more screen time. After this, he flies off to go and find one of the two sources that defeated the one of the Abalons. One of the commandments there, we haven't actually gotten... I don't believe we got an actual name card yet, so I'm not going to say it just in case. I don't want to be full of spoilers in this. But one of the commandments, the red-haired one, you know, tells him what went on with both of them, and he says, thank you, I'm going to go take off. Zildji's like, you shouldn't, and you got like very little power right now. He's like, oh, no, I'll be fine. So he pieces. We cut over to Meliodas in Camelot, talking to Arthur, talking about the Ten Commandments, all that stuff. We do not get something that was kind of crucial in the manga, but overall it's done okay in the anime. It doesn't necessarily have to be there, but it was Bartra's prophecy about you know, a beast the size of a mountain will appear, 3 heroes will be here to stop it, that kind of stuff. That is omitted from this because it wasn't actually shown, but you know, silver lining, it's still going pretty much pace for pace on what's going on, and really that prophecy doesn't really have a whole lot of bearing on the rest of the plot. It's not like referenced 100 times later on in the manga, so I can see its omission being not too relevant. Of course, Merlin is explaining Lost Vein, Meliodas' signature weapon, and the ability to split his body, to clone his body, and how the power levels work and all that stuff. And they left in the scene with the 5 Meliodas groping Elizabeth. Yeah. I love the scene of Slater also beating all 5 Meliodas along with Deanne, like, for being such a perverted piece of shit. I love it. I think it's awesome. That was just so good, seeing Slater, big towering Slater, just boom, boom, boom. Because remember, he's a holy knight meant to protect specifically her father. So he's not taking that shit from him, you know, groping the princess. That ain't cool. That ain't cool. So really, that's all right. And Merlin covering Arthur's eyes from it was just like... You don't want to see your hero like this. You're going to lose respect. This was good. This part was good, but it was made really well. It was made really well by the fact that when Galland shows up and he just crashes down, they're like, what is that ominous aura? Thundercloud. Boom! He crashes down on scene, and just Deanne's just terrifying thing, and just the shots look good. Galland is looking menacing as shit. He's looking really cool, and even with that silly looking color palette, he is just with his voice, that voice actor. I gotta find out who that is. I'm gonna put their name down here and what I must know them from, because I know this voice. This is a great ass voice actor. This is really spot on for me. I don't know why, just something about it is just like, this has made this character jump way higher than he ever did in the manga for me. He shows up and says, "Oh, Meliodas, you haven't changed a day, it seems." And of course, he says, "You are gallant as the Ten Commandments." And Hawk then references and says, you know, and you see the Balor's eye just keep clinking back and forth, and just states, "Merlin, the eye's broken." Merlin's like, "Why is that?" Because this guy cannot have a power level of 26,000. And it's like, and when that dropped in the manga, that was a big deal. And for you anime-only viewers, that is a huge deal, considering we know that the highest power level we've seen was just 5,500, the Abalon. And that's even with Meliodas, you know, at 3,000 plus, Merlin at 4,500 plus, 26,000. It's just, you know, Merlin took the time to explain Lost Vein and how full counter is perfect for the cloning technique, even though it splits powers. That's not going to help with 26,000. I mean, there's a few thousand in the difference, but then there's that. And Gallant is one of the 10 Commandments. So he's got a commandment, which is his unique power. It's kind of different than magical power. It's sort of similar to having a magical skill like the Holy Knights, for those of you who don't know. And also, he seems to be keen on, he knows Meliodas, so we can assume that he knows about full counter. So yeah, they ain't gonna be able to do shit to this guy. I'm excited to see the next episode. The episode 5 dropped in the last couple days here. I haven't watched it yet, but I'm hoping to get that video out early this week, and we'll see what happens there, and then we should finally be caught up. Thank you guys so much for watching. This was the episode review. What did you guys think? Did you love it? Did you hate it? Please like, subscribe, comment. Always be clicking those buttons. And please comment below what you guys thought. Please, you know, accept my apology for the Edinburgh Daniform mix-up with the commandments. And tell me what you guys think of how I'm doing this once again. Do you like the way I'm reviewing it? Should I be talking like in a retrospect sort of thing about, like, I do go back and look at the manga chapters and I say what I like different about the chapter versus the anime episode, but I don't want to spoil a bunch of things and talk about what's going on currently in the manga and all the information we know now and go back and do it that way, because there might be some anime-only viewers here that would get heavily spoiled. So if I think it's relevant, like with Gerhard, as a reference, I might, you know, call a spoiler section for a couple minutes and just talk about that. But other than that, I don't think that that's a good way to do it. But if you think differently, please comment below, guys. I've taken enough of your time. Thank you guys so much for watching. This has been Griever with your 7 Deadly Sins Episode 4 review. Thanks, guys, for watching. We'll see you back here next time for Episode 5. Peace out, guys.